Okay, we are live Friday afternoon. Look who I have to my right, to your left. There you go. Pay attention to driving. Yeah,
Stoplight.
oh, okay, there you go. Chris Fenwick. We're gonna we're gonna be talking about. Well, we started talking about power tools, but I think we're going to talk about the Mac Pro for this live broadcast.
It is a good analogy, however, because any job needs a good tool, right?
Absolutely. So how did you get started in power tools and
Oh,
carpentry?
gee.
What?
So the short story, it would be junior high. I was in wood shop, loved it. But keep in mind, this was, uh, you know, 45 years ago.
Right.
Uh, Loved it. I took every iteration of wood shop I could in junior high, even so far as being the teacher's aide to Mr. Spork, his name. But then, you know, got distracted and lived in apartment buildings and condos and other people's homes and didn't really have the space to explore that side of, just creating something with your hands. And a few years ago, Trish and I bought a house out in Sacramento. And I remember the night I got the keys. I'm standing in the empty two-car garage, and I just went, "Ha, this is going to be fun." And
Yeah.
it was the first time I really had like a garage space that I could explore and actually follow some passions, a different passion than, what we do for a living.
Right.
Uh, and it's just been really fun. I've made, a handful of projects around the house. I chronicle it all on my Instagram account. I've done a few actual jobs for neighborhood people that needed some mobility assistance,
Really?
additional stairs
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
ramps for wheelchairs and things like that. And it's been a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. I had no idea your woodworking interest had gone back that far. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like I said, it's something from childhood, and there's there's an intrinsic satisfaction in taking something and making it into nothing and
Oh,
making it into
absolutely.
something.
Absolutely. With you
It's
working
like
with your
it,
hands.
it's the same thing when you take a camera and you gather images and sounds and meld it together with music and whatnot, and
Right.
you elicit an emotion from somebody, whether it's joy or tears or happiness, laughter. Um, it's really satisfying to realize that, oh, I helped do that. And it's the same thing when my wife is making toast in the morning on a piece of furniture, that I created
Oh,
with my own two hands and a couple of power,
absolutely.
power tools.
Absolutely. No, I know what you mean. I love work with my hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't get to do it a lot of times from many societal reasons, especially in the big cities. We don't have the space to do it. We are strapped down with enormous uh, 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 mortgage and or rent requirements. We don't have the finances to do it, and
Right.
we live in a society where we don't value that head knowledge, so we also don't have the know-how about how to do it.
Right.
Something simple like cutting a square corner or a 45.
Right. No,
So,
absolutely.
but
So
it's been a lot of fun.
we've already got comments in the chat, and Dave
They say,
Chalmers says,
stop driving.
exactly, is Chris driving? He says, is that safe? Just please pay attention to the road. You don't have to look down here at all. If you're at a red light, perhaps that would be fine. But other than that, just pay attention to your driving. That's for
Not a
sure.
problem.
So let's talk about the Mac Pro. I asked you if you had an opinion about it. I wasn't sure if you would have one or not, but
Oh, sure.
I have a suspicion that you do.
Well, here's what I would say about the Mac Pro. Uh, we just again societally, we tend to internalize everything, and when a product or a service or a line at a restaurant or the number of cars in front of me in traffic don't align with my needs, I want to throw my hands up and complain.
Right.
And in our industry, it's a horrible. We love to complain, and let's not forget, for the last 40 years plus, Apple has always been kind of the marginalized minority, and people love to kick. If you recall, about 20 years ago when they started, well, not quite, but close, when they started opening the retail stores, I remember there was a poster at one of the Apple stores, one of the first Apple stores, that its sole purpose was there to remind people that BMW was a premium brand, but held less than a 5% market share of the worldwide automotive industry. Nobody complains about BMW going out of business or not having legs to stand on. So why should we apply the same logic to Apple? I think because of that small footprint, we also want to kind of own Apple. We want to think that Apple is here for me to make what I need. And in our milieu of professional video / content creators, there's an overwhelming mindset that if I don't have access to CUDA support in an NVIDIA video card, then it's not a professional device. I don't understand, and maybe you do. Maybe you can shed some light on it. I don't understand the angst or the disconnect between Apple and NVIDIA. But from what I understand, something happened a few years ago, and Apple has vowed to never work with NVIDIA, not a professional company, blah, blah, blah. But NVIDIA owns, I think, almost, if not, I think NVIDIA controls the CUDA support, which all the Adobe apps need. And I think some people are saying, well, if the Mac Pro, why didn't they give us full CUDA support? I don't know. Maybe it does. But at any rate, I think that in 2019, for the first time ever, I think that Apple made a computer that I don't really need. And that's not to say it's not a great computer.
Right.
I just don't need it now. I've always felt that when it comes to hardware, it's always best to just buy the very best. I always joke about, I buy the right-hand column and I check everything on the way down.
Right.
Which usually leads to a pretty expensive computer. I don't know what that number is. I know there's a lot of speculation. Let's leave that to the speculators. It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars, of course, maybe tens of thousands. But I don't think I need it. What the new Mac Pro did, however, for me was affirm just what an incredible piece of hardware the iMac Pros that we have in our office are.
Absolutely. They're fantastic machines.
I think the only complaint I would have about the Mac Pro is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it only has Thunderbolt 3 ports like the MacBook Pro. I don't believe there's any USB 3 jacks on it.
On the new Mac Pro?
The new Mac Pro, yeah. I know it's got two Thunderbolt 3s on the top.
It has two on the top, and it has an I/O card that has USB 3.
Oh, it does have USB 3 back there? Okay, good.
Yes. But that's not a problem. With all those PCIe slots, you could add as much as you wanted.
Yeah, but I'm always going to be momentarily attaching things. I think the only complaint I would have about the iMac Pro, and possibly now the Mac Pro, is just give me more ports. I understand that I can daisy chain things, but there's a lot of hardware that works better when it is. I do a fair amount of traveling for work.
Right.
And for that, I like to have a really fast drive. And I'm notorious for buying very tweaky, kind of expensive high performance drives. My current favorite, it's a box made by OWC. It's about the size of like a Big Mac box, if you will. And it has 4 SSD NVMe like chips. You know what I mean?
Yes,
The little
yes.
RAM sticks that are about the size of a
Exactly,
spoon.
yes.
And when I attach that thing to its own bus, are you getting? I'm seeing that we have a poor connection. Are we okay?
I think it's the internet connection a little bit. It's a little bit jumpy, but that's okay. Just keep driving.
Hear me?
I can hear you.
When you connect that you can't. Let me see. This might be your worst live broadcast ever, and it will be all my fault.
No, well, we can certainly do it again with more, when you get settled down somewhere. But for right now, I just wanted to jump on since you were available.
Yeah, let me get off the freeway. Maybe that'll change it.
Well, I'm sure it's a cell connection. Yeah.
Do many of your guests have problems on the freeway, Richard?
Nobody has been on the freeway before, Chris. You're the first one. But I certainly want to make sure you can concentrate on driving. Absolutely.
I do this drive all the time. I'm okay.
You do what all the time?
Let me get off at the next exit.
Okay.
It seems like we have a better connection now.
Okay.
So the thing about this drive, it's super fast. When I plug it into its own Thunderbolt 3 port, it rivals the speed of the internal SSD on an iMac Pro. It's almost identical specs, super fast. But if you share anything else on that bus, it cuts the speed in half.
Right.
So my only complaint about any Mac right now is just give me more buses, more ports that are all dedicated. But I think that I have no complaints about the Mac Pro. I think people, want to kick Apple when they're down. They want to say this is the end of Pro video for Apple. I think that's kind of just a silly comment. I think when you talk to Apple employees, you realize that the soul of Apple and what Apple corporate is, it's about creating. And I don't think they're ever going to not want to support the creative community. Now, that being said, I do think that they are definitely looking toward the future. Apple had the audacity to release Final Cut 10 without tape, without batch capture.
Right.
Because Apple saw tape is going to be dead. If it's not dead by the time we release this, it's going to be dead.
Yeah.
And we laugh at the fact that people were complaining that we didn't have batch capture with Final Cut 10. We also were incredulous when they took the CD-ROM drive out of the iMac, and everybody panicked when they took the floppy disk away from the original iMac.
I was going to just bring that up. They were just in a tizzy.
But hey, they were right.
Yes.
If not a little bit early. They may have been a little too early for everybody's comfort, but show me one file on your computer today that would even fit on a 1.4 megabyte floppy.
Of course. Of course. So you said that this is not the first Mac that you probably don't need. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I did. I think that there's 2 reasons as a professional.
Right.
There's 2 primary things that I look at when I consider a purchase. 3. Let's say 3. 1, am I going to make my money back? 2, is it going to perform substantially better than what I currently have, and therefore help me make my money back. And 3, and this is the one that nobody ever wants to talk about, but it's important. Is it going to make my client feel better looking at the fact that I have the latest, greatest, most cool thing?
Well, let me answer the last one for you. Sometimes I rent my studio out.
Okay.
And I'm not involved with editing. I just rent it out for a lower price, and
Okay.
it absolutely will make a difference to people that come in there and want to do 4K and 8K.
That's a good point. That's
Yeah.
a very good point.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same thing. You know, I'm just an editor. I sit there with producers, and sometimes producers and associate producers and content managers, whatever, sitting behind me.
Right.
And there's a real comfort when somebody, sometimes in the heat of the moment, somebody will start complaining, like, "Oh, why is this taking so long? I don't understand why we're waiting."
Sure.
And it's really comfortable to look over your shoulder at them and say, "Well, I'm using the fastest computer in the world, and you just designed a very complicated video. I'm sorry if you feel like it takes too long."
Right.
So if I don't have the Mac Pro, I'm going to have to turn them and say, there is another computer that would be faster, but I don't actually have that. So sorry, it's taking a while.
Right.
And I got to say, for that reason, primarily, I really kind of would like to have a couple of Mac Pros sitting around the office. But the other 2 factors of those 3 that I've already mentioned, they're pretty important too. And I don't see it being able to return the investment.
Well, tell me this: how long do you keep your iMacs? Do you like your iMac Pro? How long would you keep that?
That's a good question, and if you don't mind, I'd like to deliver a short sermon on hardware investments.
Okay.
I firmly believe that when you purchase item B, bear with me, I'm going to call it item B, the second item. No, we'll call it item A. When I purchase item A, I need to start saving to purchase item B, its replacement, the day I buy the first item.
Okay.
And so the reason for that is that I want to use my money to buy things for me and not borrow Chase Manhattan's money to buy things for me.
Sure.
Because Chase Manhattan actually wants more money back. They're gonna charge me interest if I don't pay it off right away. So the best way to do that, because a lot of people will do this, they'll say, well, I'll put it on the card and I'll pay off a little every month. Well, instead of putting it on the card and paying off a little every month, I strongly recommend that people start saving a little every month, that when it's time to buy the new hardware, because guess what? You're always going to want new hardware. That's one thing that's very consistent in this business. So that when it's time to buy new hardware, whether it's a computer or camera or whatever, you'll have the money to do it. And so, like, if you take sort of the kind of typical, if you do the math, take your typical run-of-the-mill laptop, it's about $2,400. Let's just say it is.
Sure.
I typically replace hardware, CPUs, every 2 years.
Okay.
And so if my laptop is $2,400, if I save $100 a month, by the time the current laptop is done, and I use giant air quotes for that, I already have the money to buy the next one.
Sure.
So that's my little sermon on money. That's the long answer. The short answer is we typically hold on to hardware, CPUs rather, for a 2-year cycle.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is we'll take them out of the primary edit suites. They'll then move to a secondary edit suite for 2 years. And then usually after 4 years, we push them out the back door. We'll either sell them. For example, we have one computer that's a little bit older that we actually leave at a client's office,
right,
because we do enough editing there that I'll just walk in, with my backpack, and I'll sit down at my computer that I own and manage and am in control over, and I'll do editing on that. So there's various, and then it's always nice to have another computer around the office to be able to say, I'm doing data ingest or something like that. So typically in a primary working environment, it's 2 years, 4 years if you take a secondary working environment. But if you're buying new hardware every 2 years, nobody's sitting at a computer that's more than 2 years old to them.
Okay, now here's my question for you. What if the Mac Pro extended that by 2 years? Because you can upgrade parts, you can upgrade CPU, you can upgrade graphic card, you can upgrade everything.
I think that's a really great thought, and I hadn't thought of that. I just read a story the other day, and I can't remember who it was. It was somebody on Twitter it may have been like Shane Ross. It was somebody who's an editor, and they work out of their home office, and they were saying that they're still using the pre-trash can Mac Pro,
right?
That they have been just pumping hardware through.
Sure.
Even so far as to say, they had a thing where OWC. Sorry, I keep mentioning OWC. I'm not trying to be a commercial.
No,
but
that's okay.
They had a program where you could send the trash can in, and excuse me, not the trash can, but the old cheese graters.
Right.
And they would pull out the CPUs and upgrade the CPUs, even though the CPUs weren't technically replaceable.
Right. Right.
So that's a good point. If the new Mac Pro adds another couple of years, that certainly offsets, what you wanted. It helps you amortize the price
exactly
over a longer period of time.
That's what I'm planning on.
And it is very interesting. I don't know what kind of video card support it will have other than the Apple supplied Mondo Super, Mondo Cool thing that it is, whatever they call that.
Here's the thing about the NVIDIA and Apple.
Yeah, I don't know that relationship. What went wrong?
The problem is that Apple wants to control the drivers and NVIDIA wants to control the drivers. That's the issue from what I understand.
Interesting.
And listen, Apple could buy NVIDIA with chump change from Tim Cook's couch. So
you're probably right. Yeah.
So I don't think there's going to be any Apple. There's going to have to be NVIDIA doing the changing because it's the same rules everybody else plays by. NVIDIA apparently doesn't want to play by them. They want to be control of the drivers. Apple says no. You have to go through us. We have to go through an approval process. All that stuff. That's what I understand.
I know that there was a big headbutting. I'm going to say 6-8 years ago. And maybe longer, right before an announcement. And as I recall, Apple swapped out to the other one. And now I can't remember who makes the card? Radeon?
Yeah,
whatever.
Well, I can't remember.
But at the very last minute, they pulled out of NVIDIA and left them high and dry because they didn't, I guess what you're saying, they didn't
I think
like
it's a driver
the
issue.
deal.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep,
it's amazing it's such a small little thing.
Well, it's, once again, if you bet against Apple, you're going to lose. I'm sorry. Right?
It's true.
Especially when Jobs was at the helm. People bet against him a lot, and they lost every time. But even now with Tim Cook there. So.
Well, there's Tim Cook, but the other very, very strong personality you have to deal with, especially when you're dealing with hardware and or pro app stuff, you got to deal with Phil Schiller, too. He's a hard nose.
Did you notice Phil Schiller was not at WWDC introducing the Mac Pro this time?
Yeah, I did notice that, and I thought it was quite interesting. I wonder what the backgrounder on that is.
Well, he had nothing to follow up with, can't innovate my ass. I think that's what the issue was. Because that's what he did with 2013. Remember, he came up and said, can't innovate my ass? With the 2013 Mac Pro, he had nothing to top that, so I guess that's why.
So what you're saying is it was mostly shame.
Something like that. I just think that, whatever the reason was, I like Phil Schiller, of course. I mean, I haven't met him, but.
No, I have nothing against Phil Schiller either. But it is kind of an interesting observation. I had, when you say that Phil Schiller was not there, I immediately say, yeah, you're right. But I had not cognitively thought that through.
Yeah, well,
Interesting.
I was wondering how he was going to top that comment from 2013. That's what I said before the WWDC.
Well, it's very convenient that he didn't have to.
Exactly, exactly.
So what are you sensing? Because I've seen your broadcasts and things. What is the general rule of thumb that you're hearing from people?
Well, listen, it was very predictable. Two things are very predictable. Number one, people were going to say it's too expensive.
Right.
Okay, so they did that. But one thing people are not saying is it doesn't have enough PCI slots.
Right. They're
Because
not saying that.
I don't think anybody was expecting 6. I mean 8.
8.
And 3,
Right.
4 of them are double wides. So
Yeah, no, it's certainly got all the bells and whistles. Oh, by the way, I will tweet this when I get off of this thing.
yep,
But to sort of come back to the woodworking,
yeah,
I saw a video yesterday where a guy took a piece of like either oak or cedar, something like that,
right.
and he mimicked fairly well the pattern, the hole pattern on the Mac Pro,
Really?
and he did it in wood.
And did he paint it silver, I guess, or just
No.
left it natural?
He stained it and oiled it. It's a beautiful piece of wood, but it's got the same grill pattern as a
Right.
Mac Pro.
Well, what do you think the Mac Pro as far as the looks go, the design of it?
I don't care that much. I think it's got it. I really don't care. I think what's interesting about it is how accessible everything is when you pull the cover off. Think back in the history of Mac Pros. The trash can, the top came off quite easily, but it didn't matter. There wasn't anything
Right.
you were ever going to do inside it.
Exactly.
The cheese
Cheese
grater
grater.
prior to that, you could pull the side off and you had full access to one side.
Right.
Great, but whatever. Prior to that, in the G4s, I think it was the plastic ones with the plastic handles.
Yep.
And you could fold the one side down and all the guts came down with it. Certainly from an accessibility standpoint, it's a home run. Do you know, I saw somebody ask this on Twitter and I haven't double checked it. Can you pull the cover off while everything is still cabled into the back? Or do you have to uncable everything to open it?
I would think you have to uncable. Well, yeah, because everything plugs in the back through PCI slots. So,
understood. But look at the way when the cover comes off, you can see all the PCI slots. The real question is, on the back, does it have a piece of metal below the cables? If it doesn't,
exactly.
you pull the top off.
You're right. You're right. It would have to have an open slot going down in order to do that.
So, I mean, it really doesn't matter. It seems like it has a practical design. The chassis of the chrome legs, whatever they're made out of.
Right. Exactly.
Apple exclusively African sourced apple unobtainium, whatever it's made out of. It seems like a very simple design, but I really don't care. I don't care. All the memes of people putting it side by side with cheese graters. That's I love that some people feel that they're very creative.
Yeah, that was very predictable.
Yeah.
That people were going to do that. I mean, but that's not original at all. I mean, everybody thinks they're original with that. Come on. I mean, the other one was called a cheese grater. Why?
Right. I do think that I'm curious. I'm curious about what it was like in the boardroom, not the boardroom, but in the conference room when they were sitting around figuring out prices and whatnot. I'd love to know what the mindset of everybody was when they said, let's charge $1,000 for the stain. and I'm not complaining that it's
No.
$1,000. I'm sure it's wonderful. I was talking with Carl Olson the other day, and I said to him, I said, Carl, have you ever put a Rolex Presidential on your wrist? And he said, no, he hadn't. And I said, well, it's a hell of a timepiece, and it's a beautiful piece of hardware. And it's clearly different than putting a Timex on your wrist.
Sure, absolutely.
And I would imagine this stand works wonderfully. If it doesn't, they're going to catch super hell. But what made them think that it was necessary to separate it? If not, and this is the only thing that I could think of, was that the person designing the stand said, oh, and it's got to have this, and it's got to be engineered to this tolerance, and that's going to make it more expensive. And then somebody said, yeah, but in a real pro environment, people use Visa mounts. And
Exactly.
so why do we want to sell this highly engineered thing if people are just going to take it off and throw it away?
Well,
so
that's
they said, well, what if let's just sell it separately. Let's pick a number. I don't know, maybe $1,000. Okay, fine. But Apple catches so much grief for stuff being so expensive, especially like their internal RAM updates and whatnot.
Yes.
That I just got to think, it's like, it's mind-boggling. I would have liked to have been in that conference room when they made that decision. Let's sell it for $1,000.
Have you ever seen anything that Apple sells that people said, oh, this is too cheap? iPhones, iPads. When the iMac Pro came out, people said, oh, it's too expensive. That's what they've always, you like that. But here's the other thing, Chris. Besides the Visa mount or whatever it's called, there's going to be third-party people that are going to make a stand for that.
Oh, sure.
Fit. So
sure. I mean, there will be plenty of people. And have you ever shopped for Visa mount stands for computer monitors?
Nope.
Do it. Go on Google. Go on the Amazon. There are thousands, probably, of various Visa mounts stands that you can purchase already. And okay. I think that's possibly what their logic was, that it wasn't that they're definitely seeing this as something beyond the desktop user, like right. from the get-go.
Right.
And if you've ever dealt with Visa mounts, it's a great world, because think about, like a stock trader who sits in front of 6 monitors.
Right.
Those are Visa mounts. And he can adjust the gap between them, and they're highly adjustable, and they hold plenty of weight. Nobody's ever talked about how much that monitor weighs. I would imagine it's fairly heavy.
I would too.
So that may be their logic, that, most people will probably use this on Visa mounts and not on a desktop mount. So therefore, why sell this highly engineered, machined from a single cube of aluminum or unobtainium, whatever it's made out of? I don't know.
Exactly.
So why should we box this up and sell it when people are not going to use it? That might be their logic.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. That absolutely could be their logic. But look, it doesn't bother me. First off, I'm probably not going to get one of those, so I don't care from that aspect of it. I don't care about the monitor as much.
Did you ever use the previous 30-inch displays?
Yes, the kind of more square ones.
Yeah, the 30-inch cinema displays.
I have one downstairs, yes.
14 years ago.
Yep, have one downstairs in the studio.
I used to work at a place where the primary edit suites had 2 of those side by side, because
right.
It's an edit suite. You should have 2 monitors, whatever.
Sure.
It was too much real estate, especially in a video edit or even an audio edit. If you're in Logic, you're primarily going to sit at your timeline.
Right.
And so, we have double 27s in our rooms. So you sit primarily in front of the iMac Pro.
Right.
And then to the left in the edit suites, we have an LG 27. And so the far corner of the LG, that's a long ways away.
Well, you're just like me, except I have a 34-inch LG.
Oh, wow.
So that's the one I like to keep the timeline on. But when I get the Mac Pro, I'll switch over to that primarily. That's all I'll use.
So you let the cat out of the bag. You will be purchasing a Mac Pro.
I decided that I will be because I'll keep it for a lot longer than I will if I get an iMac Pro.
It's good logic. I had not thought of that, and I think that's a very good bit of advice. As long as one thing holds true.
What?
That Apple has made a better decision on this Mac Pro than they did on the previous Mac Pro.
Than the 2013?
The trash can, yeah. And I think they have. And it is a PCI slot, which apparently is fairly universal. Now, we've been using iMacs for so long, I don't even pay attention to the PCI slot world anymore.
Exactly, for the most part. But I have, in my recording studio downstairs, I have a PCIe interface with 24 I/O, 24-bit audio that I have to use only downstairs with the old Power Mac. But now, if I get the new one, I don't know if they'll make the drivers for it. It's Motu interface. So, but no, the PCIe thing, that's the only thing that I'll be using for, plus graphics cards. I mean, the thing is, okay, I'm going to buy like a base model. I'm going to get an upgraded CPU, probably the 12 or 16 version, but everything else I'm going to buy third party, or I'll buy it as I can afford, like what is it, that card, that accelerator card they're talking about? I don't need that
what
initially.
They call it, the Thunder Valley.
So I don't know, who the heck knows. But that's going to be another, people are going to complain about that, how expensive that is. But I'm not.
Have they announced any price for that?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
But that's for 8K ProRes and ProRes RAW.
Well, no, it's a dedicated, my understanding, and I don't know anything. My understanding is that accelerator card is a dedicated video processing unit. So I would imagine it would also help if you're just doing possibly compressions. They said,
yes.
I think they said something about, if you got to make a bunch of proxies, this is the way to do it. So proxies are compressions. So, I think any of us that deal with video would definitely benefit from that. But it also seems like, okay, so I have this Intel chip that can be up to 28 cores. You've already said that seems crazy. I tend to agree with you for what we do.
Right, for video, right.
I got the most amazing video card available to the human race. And if I want, I can have two of them. And now there's this third thing that's also going to make stuff faster. I don't know what's doing what at this point in the computer.
That's exactly right. I don't either. I don't know what's. I know that like Logic doesn't use the CPU that much. They use I'm not the CPU, the GPU. Logic uses the CPU and RAM.
That makes sense.
Because graphically pictures. They don't care as much. So who the heck knows? But I mean, I'm going to go in at the mid-level of the CPU, and then if I can upgrade the SSD, I'll buy I'll stay at the low-end SSD. I know the RAM's upgradable. I'll get it from OWC. And
question.
Yes.
I took away that the internal storage, or the hard drive, if you will, on the Mac Pro, I believe it is the NVMe.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the same video chips. I don't know if I was breaking up at the time. Those are the same video chips that are in my OWC hard drive that I bought.
Yes.
That thing, by the way, is called the 4M, not the word forum, but 4M.2, I believe.
Okay.
And it takes 4 of those NVMe video card chips. In mine, I put 4 1 terabyte NVMe chips, but you could put 2 NVMe's. I put ones for cost reasons, obviously. but I got the whole thing built for about $850, and it's wicked fast.
Yes.
It matches the speed of the internal SSD on a iMac Pro.
Yes, just with Thunderbolt 3, exactly.
Yeah, super fast, crazy fast.
So,
which by the way, if you are a Final Cut editor, and I know a lot of your listeners are, I would recommend everybody experiment with putting their cache file on a dedicated fast SSD. Your cache file draws your icons, redraws your timeline, does all your video, your audio waveforms, and having it be faster is never a bad thing.
absolutely. I agree with you. That and also maybe even the library, not the media. Because the library database.
It depends on what you keep in your library. My libraries are typically under 100 megabytes.
Mine are too.
Giant jobs, but the library's only 100 megabytes because I keep all the cache file outside of the library.
And I keep the media outside the library.
Do you keep the cache inside the library?
I've started dedicating, like you said, dedicating it to, because I have one of those SSDs too, not the OWC brand, but another one. And it gets over 2,000 megabits per second write and over 1,000 read, or just the opposite, whatever.
So my reads and writes on this OWC thing are 2,800.
That's incredible.
It's stupid fast.
That's stupid fast over Thunderbolt 3.
Thunderbolt 3, yeah. As long as it's on its own port and you're not sharing it or daisy chaining it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So let's get you back on here again when you're in another place.
I'm not in the car?
Not in the car. And everybody was worried about you.
As they all saw, we made it home safe. I'm going to now go vacuum the pool so my wife can swim in it when she gets home. She's gonna take the train from the Bay Area.
Okay.
And I don't ever want anybody to think that I don't I'm immensely thankful and blessed for the lifestyle that we live. I don't want to sound like a whatever for like, oh, look at you going to your weekend house. It's not like that. I mean, the place in the Bay Area is about the size of it's a hotel room basically.
Right.
But it is nice to get out of the city, and I'm looking at our new lawn. And
do you want to give everybody your address so they can come over tonight and say hi?
Actually, I've never, ever once thought of doing that, Richard.
Usually I try to get Bill Davis's phone number out of him, cell phone number to pass around, but he won't do that either.
That seems mean. You're a very, very mean man.
All right. Yeah, let's connect up again. Well,
thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. We'll have you on again. I'm not sure.
Did anybody watch?
Oh yeah, we'll have these are getting between 500 to 1,000 watch views over.
Cool.
Over, so that cool. They definitely will.
All right, Richard. Well, thanks for contacting me, and I liked your input on the Mac Pro.
Sounds good, Chris. Thank you. We'll talk to you again.
All right. Take care.